Three, two, one. Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today is Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I think I'm doing all right, James. I think we're off to a roaring start with this podcast. and yeah, lots to talk about though. I'm missing our friend Brendan. Don't know where he's
Yeah,
at. I think he's a little under the weather.
he's under the
But
weather.
can I just say what a hell of a week it's been? I mean, I don't really have to get into details, but you know me, I've got so much, always so much going on, and this is a good thing. In shout out to you because I'm the one that needed like a nap after King's practice today as we record this on Saturday, and I was like, James, give me 2 hours. Let me get through, and you let me do that. So thank you, buddy.
Hey, it's complicated. Our lives are complicated. Like there's so many things going on. And we're regular people who have regular lives that, married. I've got 2 kids, I've got 3 dogs, one of which has decided to just cost a whole lot of money recently. In
Hmm.
the little Pudge life.
You know,
Uh
total, not to be dark, but total dog replacement. Sometimes you have to weigh that a little bit, right?
well, I agree, but when you look at he's
A little cheaper.
6. He's
Yeah.
6, and so when they hit you with a big doctor bill and you're looking at him, you're like, "Okay," you do have to kinda do the math. You're like, "Okay, pugs live to, like, 14 to 16 years old, so he probably still has, like, 8 to 10 years of life if we get him right," but tough pill to swallow, man. Tough
Yeah.
pill to
Well,
swallow.
and I only bring that up. I don't want to hear from, dog lovers of America and all that. I love dogs myself, but I
Mhm.
just I had a car since September of '06 that I had to replace. So going from an '07 model, but September '06 to where we are today, that's shows my commitment and what I was doing with my stuff. So I had to weigh, total car replacement.
Hey,
And,
I literally
but
just spent as much to save the pug as we spent on our 17-year-old's first car.
oh,
So, yeah,
Jesus, James.
it's not good.
That's I'll
All
comment.
right.
I'll reserve my comments. I'm sorry.
There we go. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast, and we're brought to you by Underdog Sports. We'll get into Underdog just a little bit. It's an absolutely amazing place to go do your daily fantasy sports. And we'll get into that a little bit. Again, Brendan is not with us today. He is feeling under the weather. Sean and I both want to send out a big congratulations to our friend Frankie Cardicelli, who had Frankie Jr. In the last couple of days. So big shout out to the Cardicellis and their new addition to the family.
It's a good thing it
Uh,
doesn't look like Frankie. That kid got its mom's looks, so
oh,
that's it's off to a good start.
look at that! Shots fired by Sean Cunningham. Look at that. Uh, all right, we're fresh off another Sacramento Kings victory, and like Sean, I don't know about you, but this season turnaround, just right off the bat, just feels like we've kind of been given like a second lease on basketball slash Kings life, if you will. They're now 8-2 under Doug Christie. They're 1 game under 500 at home and 1 game over 500 overall. Just where you at? We're exactly at the midway point of the season. They're 21-20 at the 41 game mark. And I did not think we would get to this point maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week, man. The way they've been able to totally turn their fortunes around and as quickly as they have is impressive. It also kind of makes me think a little like, hey, shame on you. Because look at what you're capable of. We've all known that this team was capable of doing good things, and I felt like they would have a resurgence. I just didn't think um, it would come as quickly as they did. I didn't know that they would get back to a winning record. Certainly it was possible, but I felt like there'd have to be a lot of work done. I felt like they'd have to, make a roster change perhaps, which could still come, and we'll talk about that later. But Yeah, I mean, what they're doing right now is what they envisioned when they put this team together, and I think they're doing it in the most simple ways possible. It's not like they're having an abundance of health on their team. They're still banged up. They're still dealing with nicks and knacks that just kind of plague themselves throughout the course of a season, and they're navigating those. But you have guys that are stepping up. There's what they're doing defensively and what they're doing in the fourth quarters is kind of what um has been the most impressive. Certainly we thought this team would be a great fourth quarter team. I mean, with just the scoring that they have on it
Hmm.
and some of these guys who are known for rising to the occasion. But I think if you just look at the whole and take away the coaching changes and all that, like the strides that this team has made within themselves defensively has been impressive. I mean, look, they for the longest time we were talking about how if you could just maintain, middle of the pack defensively, like how many wins could that add on to that year when you were third in the West, and really finding what you had your identity as this fast, efficient, high paced offense, and if only you could make the smallest amount of strides defensively. And I think that's what's been most impressive. I mean, you've got guys playing like all stars right now, guys playing like all NBA players, and like someone like Domantas Sabonis, and then you've got them just totally, I wouldn't say reinvent the wheel, but they've found ways, corny or not, like they found ways to play for each other. They found ways to be challenged, and these little quirks that Doug Christie brings to the team, and he's just overloading them with joy, optimism, positivity, and all these things. And yeah, sometimes a fresh message can make it. I think, and I do agree. I don't know if we'll talk about this at all, but I do agree with Charles Barkley from the NBA, Inside the NBA on TNT the other night with this part only, because I think he was dead wrong with his defensive analysis of what the Kings are. And that's why I wanted to start off this by talking about the strides that they've made, because it is impressive.
Hmm.
Um, I do believe though this next, and we talk about this when you analyze a season, this next probably, this night, we're talking 10 games. And is it possible that your season has been turned around in 10 games? It has. But have you cured all ills? Can you sustain this? That remains to be seen. And I think that's so crucial for this next 10 to 12 games to really, I really break it down to maybe a 2 or 3 week stretch leading into this trade deadline leading into the month of February to really kind of see where you are. This is the true test, the barometer. Can you be relevant again, and can you not fade away? And that remains to be seen. But right now, all things are pointing upwards for the way this team has played, the way they've responded, and just some resiliency, some grittiness. And like I said last week, I love how annoying they can be. I just it's something that is so refreshing to see for a team. And again, I've talked about how they don't play with the most physicality. They're trying. They've tried to be disruptive, but more than anything, they've been annoying. And I think that comes from their head coach.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Doug was a bit of an instigator himself as a player. Just the advanced stats, just so we have them out in front of us here while we're talking about this. In the last 10 games under Doug Christie, the Kings are 11th in defensive rating at 112.7. And it's not that far out of like ninth place where the Spurs sit at 112.3. Offensive rating since Doug Christie took over, they're at 118.9, which is fourth in the NBA. And to me, that's super, super impressive. They have been able to basically keep their defensive rating around where it was before, while jumping their offensive rating by like almost three per 100 possessions. So net rating, they're sixth in the NBA and at plus 6.2 over the last 10 games. And these things, they do matter. I mean, the advanced statistics are showing you that number one, the team is rebounding better, and number two, the team is passing the ball better. They're hitting more shots than they were before. Their pace has gone up a little bit. Like, there are a lot of things you can point to that kind of say, hey, look, this thing is moving the right direction. But I think the biggest thing is that for however he's done it, the authenticity of Doug Christie has really helped sort of stem the tide and turn this thing around for the Kings. Um, yeah.
Another thing just about that, like, really prior to like their last two games, I'm talking about after the Chicago win, their
Hmm.
defensive rating if you just take 2 of those games away, Milwaukee and the Rockets, that's obviously a win and a loss, or a loss and a win in this case. Their defensive rating was as high as 2 in the league during that stretch.
Yeah.
So like, they've hovered around 14, 15 for the season. For the season, you talk about what there was for the 10 games. Right now they're 10th in net rating, as you mentioned, but defensive rating they're 13th. And so you talked about where they are over their last 10. They're sustaining it. You know what I mean? So like, I think these last 2 games where some of the scores have trickled upwards a little bit, and yes, they've closed out. And you have a kind of a lopsided win with or loss with Milwaukee. But I mean, by and large, they're doing this, and it's something that looks like it could be sustainable as they move forward.
No, I totally agree, and I like the way that they're approaching things, and I also like look. We covered the Mike Brown era, and I was very clear that first season under Mike Brown, in all my years of covering this team, I've never gone to so many practices. It was absolutely crazy. There was practice every day that was available. There was practice for that team. I remember they even had a practice after a back to back, which never happens. And it was like, what in the world? So for me, it was like a lot of practice. And I think the approach that Doug has taken is like, look, they're going to do their work, but they're also going to bond and get closer together and find ways to interact in a different way. And we talked to Doug today. They went to an escape room like
Have you ever
earlier in
done
the
that?
week. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 times I've done the escape room thing. It's cool, and I get it. I like puzzles, and so for me, yeah, it's really cool. But I also think it's good that they like mix and match players and put groups together. And I think like look, a season is long, and you're facing like what comes next is a couple of soft games on your schedule, but then a 6-game road trip that can be absolutely brutal. And if you can't stay together, if you can't find ways to really like unlock the door together, then you are going to fail. You are going to have separation. You're going to have little factions pop up in a locker room, and especially when a coach is let go. So I think it's really interesting that what we're seeing is a turnaround, not just in like to open a season, but we're seeing a turnaround mid at the midway point where a lot of times this just doesn't happen. It just goes south and players check out and go, okay, well, we'll figure this out down the road next season or this summer when, you can ask for trades or anything else. But I like what's happening right now because it is like a crazy recovery in a very short amount of time. And like, I think Doug is doing a good job of sort of capturing the moment here. And yeah, I don't know if it's sustainable, but the numbers are telling me that what they're doing is a lot more sustainable than you thought. And also, like I'll keep saying this team underperformed like horrifically, and so like a switch at the top sometimes can mean that you have a team that was underperforming figure out ways to perform better.
Yeah, and I like what you look. I mean, I don't want people to hear that about the team activity and think, "Oh, Mike Brown never did that." And that's kind of the delicate line that
Yeah.
we're tiptoeing for really as we go forward. You're saying one thing about Doug Christie. It doesn't mean that Mike Brown didn't have similar things. I mean, the team does functions together all the time. But
Hmm.
one of the coolest thing I liked about what we learned about the escape room is really how Doug looked at the analogy of being on the road and going into somebody else's arena, and he's like, "It's like your own escape room. We're trying to escape with a win."
Hmm.
And that, like, it was just it's the little subtle little things that he's kind of instilling in them. And obviously, look, home they've been a pretty good team on the road. Like, let's face it, they've been a better road team than they have been a home team for 2 seasons now, and maybe even a little bit beyond that. But um, finding that home cooking at home has been difficult, and for whatever reason, they just haven't been able to capture that. And that was a huge message, as we all know, with Doug when he took over, which is, and I look, Alvin Gentry did the same thing, talking about the importance of capitalizing on the home court. When he, and there's a little bit of a similarity there with Alvin and with Doug when they've taken over in interim roles for their coaches, and trying to move forward. Now Doug's having the success that I think Alvin would have loved to have had at the point that he had taken over. But you can see in this stretch that these guys are buying in. And you talk to different guys, and it could be because I love the moment that DeMar DeRozan shows them highlights of what Doug Christie's like. This is who we're playing for. This is a guy who's gone up against the likes of Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady and all these incredible offensively talented players, and he was the guy that had to go shut them down night in and night out. And just look at these highlights and how and we can always relate to this with someone like Brendan. It's like we're talking about things that happened not that long ago, and he has no clue as to what those even what those even are, and we obviously make fun of him about it. But that's the same thing with some of these NBA players, like
Oh yeah.
someone like Keon Ellis, who hadn't seen a video of Doug Christie ever, and it's created this little fun back and forth that they have about who would have been a better defender, him or Doug Christie. And anyway, it's just it's moments that excuse me, like that they're really buying into and capitalizing and finding momentum and inspiration wherever they exist, and really trying to use those things as they move forward. And it's working. Like little things like that can go a long way for a team that's truly trying to find their way and try to build off of any little thing. And what I like so much about what they've done is, especially with the win over Houston for a second time, like they've been able to see a team make a run. And how often would we see that before the calendar year, where a team would make a run and all of a sudden they just go, oh, here we go, and now we're going to coast, and then we're going to play hero ball, and we're going to make these awful turnovers and get away from what was working, get away from so many times Domantas Sabonis would say in a lot of these close losses that they would have, is like we have a something that works, and then all of a sudden we get down to this oh no moment, and 8 points turns into 16 so fast, a deficit so fast. And so I wondered, I was sitting right next to you during the Houston game, and I credited earlier this year that win over the Rockets in Sacramento, I thought was their signature win of the season at that point. I think they've had some better ones since then, but I think the one recently helped solidify that, showing the fight that they had. And in this case, they go on a run. The Rockets answer right back, like immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy. They just take the ball away from you, go down there, hit a three, hit a big point or a big thing. You go on an 8-0 run, they go on an 8-0 run. And then you still are able to respond to that run without letting go of the rope. So I think that's some of the most impressive play that we've seen. I was thrilled to see that for them on a national audience. And hey, I think now that you've got these 10 games and you have these turnarounds, hey, TNT and ESPN, maybe throw some more national games Sacramento's way.
No, I'm with you 100%. Especially the way that they rebounded so quickly. And I would say, like, look, if you're looking for a game like this Rockets game, I think it like exercised like a couple of demons, right? So we saw earlier in the season where the Kings had a big lead against the Los Angeles Lakers. They allowed a 21-0 run, including like what was it, 16 from LeBron in the first, like 3.5 minutes of the fourth. The Kings did that in this game. They had a 16-point lead and they blew the lead. They also built like a 10-point lead late in the game in the last couple of minutes and blew that lead too. Like Houston came right back and kept scoring. So number one, you found a way to win a game in which you gave up a big lead. So that's one piece that I would point to. Number two, the Kings lost at least 5 games last season because they couldn't hit basic free throws. This game, they hit 13 of 13 in the fourth quarter, 20 of 22 for the game. De'Aaron Fox was absolutely spectacular, stepping up and knocking down one free throw after another. DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, I think Domantas Sabonis, they all just stepped to the line and calmly hit their free throws like they're supposed to. And I mean, they're free, right? Like that's the joke built in about free throws. They're not supposed to be difficult, but the Kings, for some reason, have made it difficult. So there's like another demon that you found a way to get past. The other one is that last season, the Houston Rockets busted your ass. They were what either 3-0 or 4-0 over the Kings, and I thought this was a huge moment where you got into a knockdown, drag out fight against again a physical team with extreme length. That's another thing that they've overcome in this specific win. And so I think one win can actually really equate to a lot of things where you're like, okay, we can do this now, we can do that, we can figure out a way to outscore a team, we can figure out a way to get stops, we can figure out a way to win at the free throw line, we can figure out ways to score when the 3-point shot isn't falling, we can figure out a way to win when Domantas Sabonis fouls out of a game in the last minute and a half. Like these are all things that if you're walking out of one game, all of a sudden you got a whole backpack of positivity that you can bring into the next game. And for me, I think that's one of the bigger like jumping off points for this team. They are building something, and some of these wins, they're not just a win. I mean, you just moved again after losing 5 games in a row on your home stand in December and dropping way under 500 at home. You now have found a way to win 5 consecutive games at home under Doug Christie. They have not lost under Doug Christie at home yet, and you're within a game of 500 at home. And that's another step that this team just can't figure out how to win at home. You know, you mentioned, Sean, they won 48 games a couple of years ago. They were 23 wins at home and 25 on the road that season. They had a better road record than they had a home record in the 2022-23 season where, you know, they had this breakout season. So this is like another opportunity for them to move past something that's been holding them up as a group.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and they've got guys that are just showing to be themselves again too. I mean, I think DeMar DeRozan has come around. I think you mentioned those free throws. He was 7 of 7 in that fourth quarter. I mean, that's what he does. I thought he was terrific, and then you get somebody like Keegan Murray, who over the course of this stretch has, we talked about in the last podcast, but someone who's kind of found himself on the offensive end again, like especially from his shooting from the perimeter. I mean, my gosh, I made a comment. There was a note I had after so since the win over the Rockets, it's the 6th straight game that Keegan Murray has a streak now of 3 or more 3-pointers this season, right? He's now made 3 or more 3-pointers in 6 straight games, and that's the longest streak of his career.
You know what's
And
crazy too, Sean? He had on the season had 3 games where he had taken 8 threes. He now has 4 in the 10 games under Doug. And
right.
and of the 10 games under Doug, he missed 2 of those. So in 8 games, he's got 8 or more threes in 4 games versus 3 the entire season before that.
Well, and I think even more impressively is like he's found a way to, I never like to just see him settle for threes, and I think that was something we saw in
Mhm.
the rookie season where it was just everything's just it's going to be everything's coming from the three. He's found a nice mix. I mean, whether it be in transition, whether it be trying to take a guy off a dribble now, which is still kind of a work in progress for him, but his ability, he can shoot over just about so many guys. I mean, I wouldn't say anybody because he does get in some matchups where he's a smaller guy, but I feel like he's finding ways to get to the hoop, and he's finding ways to do other ways to score than just settle for 3-point shooting. So the fact that he's just trying to take attempts, though, I think is satisfying, especially considering the road he's had this year, where let's face it, he's been a work in progress, and it's been a supreme disappointment. But in this small stretch, and I don't want to even call it a small sample size because I think you're seeing it a little bit even before the coaching change, but I think you really notice it right now with the coaching change, where all of a sudden maybe that was his wake up moment, and knows that he has to be that guy and has to be a guy that stretches the floor for this team because they need the shooting from the outside.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, I'm super excited to be partnering with Underdog Sports. It's my favorite place to play fantasy games. You got to check out their Pick'em game. It's super easy. You just go pick 2 through 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower on those numbers. You can win up to 20 times your money by going 5 on 5, 5 for 5. Uh, for me, I think it just adds a new element to your basketball like watching and viewing. It adds another thing where you're like, all right, I got something riding on whether, Domantas Sabonis gets a double double or not. And so again, if you are interested in jumping on board with Underdog, you can sign up using the promo code Kingsbeat, all one word, KINGSBEAT, to claim your first free pick. And First time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Can't wait to see your entries. Send them my way when you make your selections. Again, Underdog, it's just download the app. Super simple. You also, you've got to be 18 or over to play and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
Have you done lately?
I've done okay. I don't, I haven't, like, I'm not playing every single game because it gets like when you're playing every single game, it can be, for me, I just, you're like looking way too much into the stats that are happening. So, but I think on the season, I'm 3-3 with my plays, which is good because I'm way up. And my guy Kyle is not doing nearly as well on my friend Kyle from the Insiders, but he keeps going, just keeps plugging away. And strangely enough, I do way better with NFL football than I do with NBA basketball. And the cool thing about Underdog is you've got all kinds of things you can go check out, like whether it's EPL soccer or WNBA during that season and Major League Baseball. You can mix and match. Yeah, it's cool.
I gotta think the Domantas Sabonis double would be would be the easy one to check off the box of all the stuff you go with every single night. It's like him getting a double. Let me take that category right now.
Yeah, but your payout is lower if it's an easy one, right?
Okay.
So, and the cool thing I like about Underdog is you can adjust almost all the stats. So if you're looking at, De'Aaron Fox's 26.5 points, you can click on that if it's got the little up arrow and down arrow, and you can go up or down and then choose your higher or lower based on that, and your payout odds go up or down. And so to me, it's a little more versatile than some of the other games that are out there. So give it a shot.
Cool.
Use promo code KingsBeat. More information, just go down below to in the YouTube channel, and you can see it down there. And that reminds me, if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up, subscribe
Yeah,
to
what
the
happened?
channel. We would
How are we
totally
doing on those
appreciate that.
thumbs up? Are we doing all right with thumbs ups these
I
days?
I don't know. I have not been checking religiously like I normally do. We have had a lot of comments lately, which is always fine.
Oh,
Unless they're rude. Like on occasion, you
nah, go ahead,
folks
be
out there
rude.
can
It's
be
fine.
rude, like whatever.
I get in the crosshairs sometimes, and that's okay. Because honestly, like, and I say this all the time, I'm amused for what you know, filth and dreck and absolute, disgusting comments you see on social media. People listen to us are pretty kind. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can poke fun at, but you guys are pretty kind overall.
I agree. I agree. And like, look, it's just part of the basketball conversation, right? Sometimes Brendan jumps in there. Somebody called Brendan milquetoast the other day. I
Oh,
didn't think that was very nice. But
hmm,
Brendan did respond and say he would try to use it in a sentence all week. So
good.
I guess take that. Um, Sean, you were talking about Keegan Murray, and he's shooting 32.4% from three this season, and that's a huge increase from where he was just a couple of weeks ago. Over his last 6 games since returning from the ankle injury, he's averaging 14.5, 7 rebounds, a block, zero point 0.7 steals. He's shooting 48.5% from the field and 47.7% from three on 7.3 attempts per game. Um, he feels like he's turned a corner, and I mean, to be honest with you, it really helps the Kings because he's the one guy that, in your starting lineup, you saw that could increase his productivity by a ton and not really, like, take up any more of the oxygen in the room, if you know what I'm saying. And, like, Sabonis is who he is, Fox is who he is. I think Monk and DeMar DeRozan, they're all gonna do what they're gonna do, but when you got Keegan Murray, who's averaging, 11 points per game like a week and a half ago, all of a sudden he's starting to show you that he can bounce back and be more of the player you thought he would be this season. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, confidence is everything, and you'd see Mike Brown historically, throw a tantrum on the sideline, trying to scream at him to shoot the ball, and I think it shows. It speaks to the evolution of him because of how great of a defender that he's become. so young in his career, and I think that's a good thing. I know there's so many people that want to equate what he does defensively as taking away from what he does offensively. Great players, that's what they are. They're two-way players, and they do it on both ends of the floor, and he serves an absolute need for this team defensively as well. But that shouldn't take away from his ability to get shots up. Now, whether they fall or not, that's a whole nother story. But I haven't been totally bothered by, obviously him missing when the team needs 3-point shooting in the worst way has been concerning, and seeing how contagious the poor shooting hit would become earlier in the season. Certainly, we've talked about Kevin Huerter's battles with that, but they have to find a way that if the ball isn't falling for somebody, that other people stand up, and it's been less of a problem lately. Early in the season, it was like you've got 4 guys at the same time who just couldn't shoot. It was like one of those nights where you'd historically say it's 1 of 82. No one had it tonight. And those are probably still on the horizon as well. But I think there's less and less of that, because it felt like the norm was having 2 or 3 guys just not have it offensively, or not have an efficient scoring night, and you'd have to rely on somebody to kind of backpack you to a win. That's the ball stagnates in those circumstances, and that's not a recipe for success. So I think that they've tapped into something, and to be able to keep it going would be nice. You mentioned though Domantas Sabonis, and like how isn't he like leading isn't he leading the league in 3-point shooting right now?
He's leading the league in rebounding and 3-point percentage. He's
Yeah.
shooting 47.8% from 3. Like, this whole is he an all-star or not is just like the biggest BS thing of all time.
Well,
Like,
it is. I hate that we have to constantly talk about this all the time, but you just saw him go up against somebody like Alperen Şengün against Houston, and again, Domas comes out on top, and Domas is his stats are better. There's some categories that they're still very, very close in.
Mhm.
And yes, Sabonis is a former All-Star himself. Şengün is going to be a star in this league. I feel like but here's the thing: these, as you guys all know, these coaches reward team success, and like it or not, the Rockets didn't piss away half their season like the Kings did. They didn't go through a coaching change. So if you have to reward somebody from Houston with an all-star nod, it's going to be Şengün.
Probably.
And in my opinion, you put both of them on that team. But then you've, obviously what Nikola Jokic is doing, all-star, all-world, whatever, all-NBA.
Anthony
he's
Davis.
MVP. Anthony Davis is playing so well. So is there room for 5? I don't know. And especially when you get
Wemby.
Right. I mean, incredible. So that's where it gets weird, and all those teams, with the exception of the Spurs, aren't they? Well, actually, we're the Lakers right now. I haven't checked the standings here in a second.
They're still well above the Kings.
Right. So I mean, all things considered, you have some time here to kind of trend the right way. But I do feel, and I know some people balk at this, but when you're looking at the Kings and you have a sample of people who are going to do this, I think there is a split when you look at De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and who do you reward? I think it's tough for both of them to get in. The Kings have to get out of the play-in tournament, in my opinion, to try to really make any gripe about, someone got robbed, because again, you're rewarding team success there. And it's unfortunate because you put up numbers. We went through this with DeMarcus Cousins before, where he's putting up insane numbers on a bad team, or a middle of the road team at that point. And just for him to be able to get there, luckily he was able to do so as a big, when a lot of bigs weren't nearly putting up the numbers that he does. But I do wonder how this new All-Star game format will impact. Maybe not this year. I think we have to kind of see it first with the 4 teams, and really it's 3 NBA teams and another one that's the Future Stars team. But I am curious to see what that looks like and how that shakes things up a little bit, because if you have 3 teams, are you putting 2 bigs on each team? And at that point, I'm not good at math, James, but 2, 4, 6, right? That's 6 that get in.
No, that's
if
true.
You want to have two bigs on each team. So
okay.
I don't know.
I think it's going to be interesting because there's a bunch of players who have missed a ton of time. And so I think it does open the door. I mean, like Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid.
Who will be voted in? He's going to be voted in.
I don't think Luka is going to be voted in.
As a starter? He's
Yeah,
third,
he's
isn't he?
third in guards. That
Okay.
doesn't get you voted in.
Right.
Yeah, so he's gonna have a difficult time being
I
voted
still
in,
think he gets it.
and he's already ineligible for All NBA. Him and
Right. But
Embiid both are.
I still think he's gonna get in the voting.
Well, maybe it's
Yeah.
possible, but I mean, it's also possible he does not make. If he doesn't get in on the voting, he doesn't deserve to be there. Like, unfortunately, it's just he's missed way too many games. Um, okay, let's get to a couple other things. Number one, Keon Ellis was at practice on Saturday. Um, we even saw him after the game the other night when he rolled his ankle. He stepped on Demonis's foot and rolled his right ankle. He was able to walk off the court during the game and walk straight to the locker room, was ruled out. There's a good chance that he's going to be listed as questionable for Sunday's game against Washington. There's a good chance he doesn't play though. Like questionable. Like from what we heard today, they're going to err on the side of caution with him, and so it's possible that he won't play. Devin Carter is likely out tomorrow as well. He has a sore, let's say, right wrist. I want to say
Right
right
wrist. Yeah.
wrist. Uh,
It is. Yeah. He had it wrapped at practice today as well.
yeah, and then Jordan McLaughlin has been away from the team for personal reasons. Sean, he wasn't at the bowling thing, right?
Jordan McLaughlin, no, he was not,
Yeah.
and I think
Okay.
I think some of that has to do with obviously things that are happening in Southern California. It's not great to speculate, but he's a SoCal kid as well. So with all the
Well,
madness and stuff that's going on down there,
there's also
it's
something going on
understandable.
with family stuff. So
Right.
we don't get into this stuff unless players want to make it known. That's just kind of my policy, and it's
Yep.
kind of Sean's policy as well. Player wants to tell us what's going on when they return, then we're all ears and we'll pass that information along. But it's nothing nefarious. But
But he wasn't
this
on the he wasn't on the list for the injury list for tomorrow.
oh for tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
It was just Devin Carter and just Keon Ellis. So
Okay. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back
right.
for tomorrow's game. Also, Domantas Sabonis was away from the team today. He went to Gonzaga, where they're retiring his number or his jersey this evening. So that was the other thing that, no Domas, but he will be back and ready to roll for tomorrow's game against the Washington Wizards. Sean,
Who suck?
like, yeah, they are
Who
bad.
absolutely suck?
What they're 6-33 in the season, I believe. Maybe.
Yep,
Oh, and they're playing tonight.
they're
So you'll
playing the
get them
Warriors
on
tonight.
second night of a back-to-back. Um, I mean,
They need to absolutely throttle that team. They've come into this game with the Warriors on an 8-game losing streak, 1-9 in their last 10. Just not not a good basketball team. Absolutely horrendous.
and of their 33 losses, not one of them has been by single digits.
I mean,
It's
they're the
like,
worst team. They're the worst team in the league. And to be
yeah,
honest, I don't know how much you've watched them. I've ended up watching them on a few occasions. One of which was, gosh, I feel like I just watched them a week ago. I wanted to absolutely vomit watching them play basketball. It was just gross.
yeah, yeah. So I will correct myself. They have not lost by a single possession, not single digits, single possession. So the closest their 33 losses is 4 points, which is crazy. I mean, that's just absolute. They haven't even like lost by a buzzer beater or lost by one or two. They every single game is by four, and actually most of them are by 9, 10, 15, 20. They're bad.
And we
Um,
set all that up to say that don't take them lightly because
don't take them lightly.
that is still an quote unquote NBA team as much
Isn't
as
that
they don't look
didn't
like
they
it.
beat you last season? And they were a similar bad team? Is that one of
God,
the bad losses of last season? I believe it is.
they're
You
just
lost to
gross.
Detroit. Yeah. Like ugly losses. Yeah, the Kings can't afford to lose any games like this at this point. Just kind of where you put yourself in the standings. They have climbed all the way back up. I don't know exactly where they are as we speak. I guess I can look, and it would take me 2 seconds. The Kings
Are you
are
talking about the Kings? Yeah,
yeah, the Kings are ninth in the
they're at
Western
ninth.
Conference standings. They are one game behind the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are a game and a half, I believe, behind the Dallas Mavericks. 2 games behind the Lakers. 2.5 behind the Clippers, and something like 4 behind the Denver Nuggets, who sit in
Eh,
fourth
yeah.
place.
And those last three teams, James, 4, 5, and 6, Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers. So yeah, through two, when you have two games behind the Lakers at sixth, I mean, it's not far. It's not far away. They've made so
Mm-mm.
much progress to move up, and then you kind of see, like a week ago, I was talking about, the teams that you don't know about who kind of look like frauds a little bit. I don't know that anything has changed since then, but my goodness, are the Warriors on kind of a nosedive. They did just come away with a win coming into tonight's game against before tonight's game coming in against the Wizards, but they're a 500 basketball team and they're 11th, so that just shows you how kind of huddled up all these teams are at the lower end of the Western Conference.
Yeah, totally, totally. And like, look, the Kings haven't cleared these teams. They're tied for 9-10 with the Phoenix Suns, who again went on it like a death spiral and have kind of bounced back. Yeah, it's going to be a long trek here, especially when you look at what's ahead for the Kings. So they play Washington on Sunday. They follow that up with another 2-day break, which is crazy. And that's the game in which they play Golden State. They play Golden State on Wednesday. They fly to Denver and play the Denver Nuggets on a back-to-back, which is one of the worst back-to-backs imaginable because you have to leave after the game because you're not allowed to travel day of. You have an hour bus ride from the airport to the hotel. On top of that, you have an hour time change. So Kings won't get in until probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and then have to play the Nuggets at elevation to kick off their 6-game road trip. Their 6-game road trip has a really interesting stop in New York where they play both the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks over like a 3-day period. So I believe they're going to stay in the same hotel for 4 days in New York, which is crazy. That
It's
doesn't
not bad.
usually happen. They get a stop in Philadelphia against a beat up 76ers team that may or may not have Embiid by that point. He'll be out like 7 to 10 days at a minimum before they reevaluate him for knee swelling. And then you finish that trip off with a pretty wild like Timberwolves and Oklahoma City stop. So it's not going to be an easy road trip. And then when you get back, like we keep talking about this build up to the All-Star break or even the build up um, to the trade deadline. The Kings have a bit of a break when they get back. They play Orlando, but then they go uh, at Portland. They host the Pelicans. They go at Dallas. Pelicans twice on a back-to-back in New Orleans. The Warriors and the Hornets and the Jazz. And so there's this group of games after that road trip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games with some very, very winnable contests. And again, so I wouldn't get too discouraged if the Kings have a bad 3-3 or 2-4 road trip. I also wouldn't be shocked if they went out and went 4-2 or something on the road because that's just how they're playing right now. But this is still going to be like you want a couple of games here against Washington and Golden State where you don't let off the gas. You get 3 games over 500 before heading out on the road, and then all bets are off.
I love that in the schedule in February where it's right before the All-Star break, and you get the Pelicans 3 games in 6 days,
Mhm.
one on your home floor, and then you have that baseball series, that back-to-back, that Wednesday, Thursday in New Orleans, and it's, obviously they're among the worst teams in the league right now, and they've been plagued by injuries, but I'm curious to see what that team looks like, uh, by the time the Kings face them. And honestly, they could play them on the 8th, which is the Saturday, February 8th. They could play that game. They could play the Pelicans in Sacramento on the 8th, and the Pelicans could look different. Kings might as well when they play them again. Or actually, wait,
Well, no, the trade
deadline is
deadline
when?
is the
Yeah, trade
6th.
deadline's earlier. Yeah,
So
sorry,
you
6th.
could actually face them 3 games in 4 nights. Well, you are facing them 3
You are,
games in 4
yeah.
nights, 2 days after 3
No, it's
games
3
out
and
of 4.
6.
Yeah,
No,
it's
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 3
3
games
and
and 6
6.
nights. Yeah.
Yeah, but 3 out of 4 games you play against the Pelicans, and it comes 2 days after the trade deadline, which everyone in the league expects the Pelicans to be active at the trade deadline, especially with the Brandon Ingram situation hanging over them, and for that matter, a bunch of other situations hanging over them. So that team, I mean, they can still beat the Kings. We've seen that they went 6-0 against the Sacramento Kings last season, but it's a different team, a totally different team right now, and they've been struggling. And A little bit better lately, but still struggle. Okay, Sean, let's get to the business of basketball. We've got
Sounds
about,
good.
what are we, 3 weeks away from the trade deadline? Something like that. Let me see, 13, 19 days. Something like that. 19 days until the NBA trade deadline. The Kings continuously are mentioned in multiple trades. Again, this is one of those times of the year where people are putting stuff out there that you really have to vet. But we do know, I know personally, that the Sacramento Kings have had conversations with the Brooklyn Nets about Cam Johnson. We know that they've had conversations multiple times in the past with the Washington Wizards about Kyle Kuzma. We know that John Collins has been available for anyone who wants to take his $26.5 million salary for next season off of the Utah Jazz's hands. I'm a little leery on his injury, which is some sort of hip injury, but I'm also a little leery on the Utah Jazz and their hunt for Cooper Flag and whether any injury is legitimate with them at this point. Um, if I had to if I were to lay out 3 trades on the table here, Sean, and one of them is maybe Kyle Kuzma and a highly protected first, to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for, it probably cost you at this point, Kevin Herter and Trey Lyles. Second deal would be Cam Johnson comes to the Sacramento Kings, Kevin Herter, and maybe like 1 or 2 of your minimum scale contracts, along with a pretty loosely protected first round pick. Would you take that? Or if you could trade, again, you bring back someone like John Collins. Kings send out Kevin Herter, maybe a future second, because that's kind of where the value has been for him, and then a couple of extra assets when it comes to like maybe a couple of expiring young contracts, or maybe a Trey Lyles. What would you be more inclined to do?
Um, I don't know. I think I probably lean more to the John Collins side of things, if I'm being honest. I I feel like from a physical standpoint, that's probably the guy I like the most. I like Cam Johnson to a degree. I think that I think he could help be a nice player next to Sabonis. I just kind of question. I think some of the stuff you'd have to give up a little bit more for him. That part doesn't sit well with me for someone like Johnson, but um, I think just from what I'm giving up in terms of John Collins, I think that one just sits a little bit better with me. Can I offer another scenario though? And I
Oh,
think
let's hear
it's
it.
more of a poor man's. Well, I don't know about poor man's, but I think a guy I'd be looking at pretty hard as myself would be Chris Boucher out of Toronto. I know Orlando Robinson just went over there on a 10-day. Not that that really totally means anything there, but I think that's another player that could be looked at as the trade deadline nears. Just someone to keep your eye on as Toronto kind of flounders, and some of the things he's able to do, especially stretch the floor and be a little bit of a shot blocking presence himself, I think is somebody that doesn't come up enough.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so Chris Boucher, like for whatever reason, busted up the Kings a couple of times. He's about as long and athletic as you can possibly find, but one of my issues with Chris Boucher is he's not very young. And, again, I don't think the Kings are like completely concerned about age. But, we're looking at a guy who is, 32 years old, and I'm looking at his contract status. He is owed. He's in the final year of a $10.8 million contract.
It's a cheaper kind of version of if you're not so set on trying to part ways with so many of your quote unquote talent that you have or assets. I think it could be a little bit more attainable. But and he's actually putting up decent. He's had some different decent games over, especially over the last uh really last month. I mean, from what I've seen. But
Hmm.
yeah, I've seen him a couple times and felt like he could he could add something to Sacramento. I've heard his name pop up a few times in just general conversations, and some people who've um, felt like he could add something to Sacramento.
Okay. I'm gonna I think for me, Boucher is like that's like a Band-Aid solution, and it's super short term,
Right.
and
It's
you
not
have
a
no idea
it's
where it
not a
goes.
right.
Yeah,
It's not something, it's not in the ilk of Cam Johnson or John Collins, who's going to be on on your roster for at least these next few years to come, unless you somehow decide to flip him. But
yeah.
certainly addresses a need.
Yeah, and so just running down the John Collins numbers. John Collins is averaging right now for Utah 17.9 points, 8.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.1 steals, zero point 0.9 blocks in 29.9 minutes. He's also shooting 43.8% from 3 and 52.5% from the field. He's done this before in his career where he's looked like this player. Like in his third NBA season, he averaged 21.6 and 10 rebounds and shot 40% from 3 on similar volume. He also averaged like 1.6 blocks per game. The idea of John Collins, Sean, to me has always been like one of the most perfect fits next to Domas. And when you throw in the Malik Monk aspect, I do really like John Collins. So just running through really quickly, he's like a year and a half younger than Cam Johnson. And I think he's right around the same with Kyle Kuzma. He just turned 27. He's part of the 2017 draft class with De'Aaron Fox and that's turned out to be an incredible draft class, except for the two other guys the Kings took in the first round, and Justin Jackson, and unfortunately Harry Giles. Um, John Collins, he's owed 26.5 million next year, but it's a player option. I don't think he's going to opt out of that. But even if he did, I could see if he likes the situation in Sacramento, where he might do something like what Harrison Barnes did and sign a 3 or 4 year extension where you're doing sort of the declining scale contract, like a 23, 21, 19 type deal. So that's another avenue that kind of look out with John Collins. Cam Johnson again will be 29 in March, and he's under contract for 2 more years, and his contract is way better than everybody else's. It's like it drops to 20.5 million next year, it goes back up to 22.5 million the year after that. But I just like I like Cam. I mean, I like John Collins too, and I did not think I don't know why I talk myself into these things, but
Because you're crazy.
well, first of all, he can shoot the 3. Secondly, he can block shots. Third, he's a much better rebounder, basically twice as many rebounds per game as Cam Johnson. I don't think the defensive numbers are all that much different between the two. And then the other thing that I really like about John Collins is his ability um, to be a lob threat for Malik Monk. And I
Well,
think
I also think he's more physical. I think
oh
in
yeah,
terms of just being a load on guys, like pause, sorry, but just being like in terms of just seeing him, be so much of a physical player, it just sometimes a tough object to move. People have to you have to be aware of where he is all the time on the court, and even at all. I mean, he can get you with a crazy screen. I mean, he's a massive human being, and he's very solid. So I think that type of presence is something that they need, and I think if you can go out and get it, you probably should.
no, I'm with you. I did not feel that way a little while ago. And again, I'm going to be a little leery on the hip injury for Collins. He hasn't played a bunch of games lately. I think he's missed like 12 out of the last 13. But I mean, again, so is Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson's
Yeah.
been out like 6 games with an ankle sprain. Brandon Ingram has been out since like the first week of December with an ankle sprain and really hurt his value heading into the trade deadline. And then the one guy who does keep playing but just doesn't play very well is Kyle Kuzma. And, we'll get a look at Kyle Kuzma here on Sunday. But I'm leering it on anything that's going on in Washington outside of maybe Jonas Valanciunas, who's been there for like 5 minutes. Um, I think everybody else, like really the stench of what's happening in Washington is all over some of those players. And I don't think I'm touching a guy who chose to go back to Washington in a losing situation and now is like stuck in a really, really awkward, like they're not a rebuild. They're just kind of lost and rudderless, and that team is just a hot mess. The whole franchise feels like a hot mess.
Well,
S-
I also think somebody coming in like John Collins. I think for him, he can be frustrating for a lot of people because you can see him going out there and putting up points, but it's not really what he needs to do on the Kings team. It's like certainly his ability to shoot uh, from the perimeter will be attractive, and him being capable of going out there and get you 20, 25 points, whatever a game would be fantastic. Being capable of doing that, I don't think he needs to do that necessarily with the scoring power that's on this team, but so much more so, I think where his minutes will come from will be giving Sabonis help, giving him some much needed paint protection, rim protection a little bit, but really just keeping guys out of the paint, helping with on the boards, being able to be that physical force. And I don't think any of those other teams, with respect to Cam Johnson players, again Cam Johnson, even Kyle Kuzma, and even Chris Boucher, I think Collins is a better avenue that way. Boucher is certainly long. He just doesn't have that type of girth that Collins does. He's so compact and just strong and solid. So that to me, I think would really form well with the team that they've constructed here in Sacramento. And if he could buy into that type of role, it's like you don't have to be out there looking for your own. Certainly, he does that with Utah right now because they're not very good, and he needs to be a scoring threat, but he's always a guy who's been banged up a little bit. He gets a lot of little
mhm.
nagging injuries along the way, and I think when you look at someone like Cam Johnson and even Kyle Kuzma, they're going to come in here and look to get theirs, and that's all well and good. But for what this team needs, scoring has never been a problem. So the Kings are always looking for two-way players, always looking to somebody who can not be a zero on the offensive end. So that's why, especially for maybe what you're giving up in the circumstance to get Collins, that's probably the most attractive. But I think Danny Ainge is going to be Danny Ainge and maybe overvalue some of the pieces that he has.
No, that's very true. I just know that early in the season, you could have had John Collins for not even a pick. They were willing to move off of his salary regardless of how well he was playing. I just think that John Collins is he's a more complete player, and I would also say that I'm in the mode now that the Kings need somebody to help their bench, like, pretty dramatically, and, it doesn't mean he has to score 18 off the bench, but if you could get a guy who could put up 15 points on a lot of nights and get you 6 or 7 rebounds off the bench, I'm all for it. I think he can play with Domas. I think he can swap out and play some small ball 5. I agree with you about the physicality that he plays with, and he's just versatile as a scorer. He can shoot the 3, he can get in the two-man game with the lob, and he can also, we've seen it, in the games against Utah this season, he can just back you down
Mhm.
and beat up the Kings, like, by going over them. So, I'm intrigued by him. Again, I was intrigued by him when he was a young player, and they were always looking to get out from underneath his contract in Atlanta. You have to be a little bit leery about a player that every team, that he's been on is trying to trade him, and get out from underneath the contract that he's under. But at the same time, I think the Kings need more of a offensive threat, a guy that can, on any given night, go for 25 or 30, as opposed to somebody like in a very extreme situation, be it Kevin Herter or be it Trey Lyles at this point, might be able to get you like 17 to 20. And I think John Collins is just a different type of threat on a nightly basis. So anyway, that's kind of where I
Well,
would
and
go
then
to.
this team is, and we talked about it for a few weeks now, is like since you move Malik Monk in, like you have a very top heavy scoring rotation, and
Hmm.
you don't have a full second unit. You don't. It's not like how you play that way. But I'm of the opinion that the bench scoring with this team is not a problem because like if you put Malik Monk on the bench, well, there's your bench scoring. You know what I mean? Like it's still
Hmm.
coming from the same places. The players that weren't contributing from a scoring standpoint are the same players that are just on the bench. Like if you have Kevin Herter in your lineup and he's not contributing and he's in your starting rotation, now you just move Malik Monk scoring to the bench. Like, yeah, no shit, your bench is not going to score. So,
Yeah.
and to be honest, James, and I know like whether it be Cam Johnson, even John Collins, I think I don't think there's necessarily a guarantee that either one of them come off the bench. I think maybe if either one of them come to Sacramento, it could be in a starting rotation eventually. Maybe not right away because you're brand new to the rotation, but I feel like in my mind, if you're doing a move like this, you already know what your roles are with guys like Keon Ellis and you know, DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk. So, I don't think you take DeMar out of the starting lineup. I think you having somebody like Malik, if he went into the bench role again, certainly he might gripe a little bit, but he's always going to do what's best for the team. And I think in doing so, getting players like this, whether it be Collins or Cam Johnson, like this is to help Domantas Sabonis. And I think you want to see them play alongside Domantas Sabonis, and whether that be even Keegan Murray, you want to go bigger. I think you want to go bigger in your starting rotation because it's these bigger teams that come in here and absolutely thump you. So I'm not convinced that these guys have to come off the bench, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see a way in which they might make a change, but I just think once you hit the Malik button in the starting lineup, and then he goes for averages 20 points a game basically as a starter,
Well,
and
no,
and
take away
7 assists.
that. This playmaking has been absolutely sensational,
Oh yeah, yeah,
just
he's been.
incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, we got to like from where we sit. Sean and I sit right next to each other at the top of 105. And there was a play where Malik cut towards the visitors' bench and was in the two-man game with Sabonis, and he dropped a pass to Sabonis, and we saw like this little tiny hole open up, and Malik just bounced the ball right through that hole, right to Sabonis's left hand, who just went right up for a basket, and it was so gorgeous to watch from like the
Yeah.
angle that we had of it. Absolutely spectacular what he's doing in the two-man game right now, and that's why, hey, like go get a player that can play in the two-man game. And if I'm looking at all of them, John Collins is a guy who can play in the two-man game better than Cam Johnson or a player like Kyle Kuzma. I just think he's a little more versatile as a scorer, and to me that's intriguing. He can hit the three for sure, but he can also fly above everybody for a dunk, and he can also in a pinch back someone down. And I don't really think the Kings have somebody outside of Sabonis that can really back somebody down. And that to me, like you add that other element along with the DeMar DeRozan mid-range game, and then the speed of your guards, the three-point shooting of Keegan Murray. Either way, I think John Collins would instantly warrant like 25 plus minutes a night and could really take some of the stress off your starters.
Yeah,
All right,
I agree.
Sean. Do we have anything else we want to talk about?
Final thoughts.
Okay. Final
I had
thoughts.
a. Oh, did I jump it?
No, it's okay. I said, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Oh God, no. No, I actually had a good time at the bowling thing the other night. Actually, it was last night, and it was kind of fun watching some of these guys have a moment like this to really break up the monotony of the season, because you get to interact with fans. You kind of get to do a little competition. You mentioned the escape room. It's stuff like this where things really are kind of just kind of give a little bit of refresh to a very tense situation, which is and can you imagine going into that bowling event where you're scuffling and like, let's say this Doug Christie era isn't off to the 8-2 start that it is, and let's say it's a 2-8 situation, and you're pretty much out of it at this point. It would have been a much different type of environment, but it was a really cool environment to see. Guys were having a ton of fun, seeing a lot of good and a lot of bad bowling, but also some good bowling out there. But it was cool for me because, like, I don't, unless I'm out, on the streets or something, kind of out and about on the town. When I'm working at the arena, I'm never really able to engage with fans so much because I'm always kind of working and just on. But it was cool for me just to be able to see so many fans that were out there that recognize not only the work I do, but what we do here at the podcast, and people wanting to hear a little bit more of our podcast more frequently. So that's a challenge to you and I to try to make that happen.
Yeah. It's not easy, folks. It's not easy. There's three of us, and we all have different schedules, and we all have very, very busy lives, and we're trying to do as much content as possible. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's always like dipping, dodging, ducking, and dodging, right?
And hold on, I'm gonna do this from memory too. Shout out Devin from Placerville. I'm gonna get him wrong. Rob from Citrus Heights, my buddy Troy who was out there. I've seen him several times. He's always coming out to a lot of these Kings events. The Sign Lady and Nico were in
Nico.
attendance. It was great to kind of. I spent probably most of my time talking to them
I haven't
and
seen
just
a lot
catching
of
up
them
with those guys.
this year.
Yeah, they were there in attendance. They had two different kind of areas for fans to be able to engage with, and then the bowling was its own separate thing. And
Mhm.
cool, whether you bought one of the lower end tickets or the higher end tickets, it was all going to a good cause. And this is something that dates back to when Doug Christie was a player. So I missed it last year. I can't even remember what got in the way. Something got in the way. I wasn't able to go. But I enjoy it. I hate bowling. I don't like to wear other people's shoes. That's kind of a weird thing.
Okay. Why
Actually,
don't you just buy your own shoes on Amazon?
I was on a
Just saying.
I was on a date last year where the girl I was seeing at the time was really into bowling, so we went a few times. And leave it to me to be injured while bowling. I went with I went with one of the I was trying to throw a ball, and the like my finger got kind of stuck in the little
Oh.
notch, and yeah, had gave me some problems for a few weeks.
Oh, yeah. Got a
Actually, no,
little.
not a few weeks, a few months actually. It was painful.
You probably had an avulsion fracture there in your
I
thumb,
don't know.
Sean.
It was no,
You
not
probably did
thumb. It
the.
was a ring finger because
Oh.
I tend to like
Oh.
go like this, like with the two middle fingers, and
Oh, got it.
yeah. And so many people don't put their fingers in. They just kind of do the little flip of the wrist and try to throw a strike
This
that
is
way.
all
I
like
can't
one
do that.
giant pause moment. Everything you're
I know,
saying, I
I
just
know.
like.
I'm doing it on purpose. So I was
Yeah.
navigating it until you brought it up.
Not easy, not easy. Yeah, you can buy shoes yourself, Sean, so you don't have to wear other people's shoes and don't have to
Yeah, but
pay
okay, hold
the
on. How
$4 rental. I'm just
Sir,
saying.
how often do you go bowling to where you're gonna buy your own shoe
Well, I
or
don't
your
go
own
bowling
ball?
at all anymore, but
Yeah.
so I don't have a pair of bowling shoes. But if I was to take up bowling, I would just go buy some bowling shoes.
Well, I'm not taking a bowling. What did we learn today though from Doug Christie? Bowling alleys, they have the best milkshakes.
Oh, they do. And Doug also said that his uncle owned a bowling alley when he was a kid. I
Yeah.
believe in the Seattle area.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
take his word on the milkshake though. I'm not gonna venture
Oh,
out and try.
well, they've got like the best like like crappy beer. Like, do you want like really crappy
Well,
draft, like
I
low
don't
budget
don't
beer?
I
The
don't do
bowling
the
alley is
beer.
always the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do too much beer. But I will say, I love names of bowling alleys. Like you get a place like Pinheads or you know,
No strikes. Yeah.
Strikes. Yeah, they're always like, okay, that makes sense.
It was too far away for me to go. It was, it's like an
The
hour and a
Red
half
Hawk
drive for me to
Casino.
get. Yeah, it's an hour and a half drive for
Their
me to get up
Apex, by
there.
the way, if you haven't been there, it is. I went up there and did a story with Kyle Larson and I think it was Ricky Stenhouse, some NASCAR drivers, Elk Grove's Kyle Larson, and right when they opened the Apex, and you've got this huge bowling center, you've got a bunch of like go kart. They have an incredible go kart track,
Oh,
a lot of arcades. The bar is massive. There's TVs everywhere. A golf simulator. Like last year, that was the thing that drove all the guys. Like no one wanted to bowl. They all wanted to go play at the golf simulator.
oh,
They have
got
like
it.
this. I don't even know how to explain it. So maybe someone in the comments can. But it's like you're in a virtual reality like headset, and you're in this like chair of like 4 and 4, so 2 rows of 4, and it goes all over the place like you're in a fighter jet. So I don't know if that's what it is. It looks like a roller coaster, but it keeps bringing you up and turning you around, and definitely probably make you want to throw up or something. But it's really cool. Like they have so many really cool things at that Apex. So,
All right.
and it doesn't smell like cigarette smoke, which is the worst thing about going to a lot of these casinos. They keep the Apex smoke free. So that was
Okay.
great.
Interesting. Sean will not put on bowling shoes, but he will put
Right.
on a VR headset that has been on other people's face.
Oh, they sanitize that. It's not some
Whatever, Sean.
spray.
They
What's that spray that
sanitize
they
those
spray in the shoe?
sanitized like shoe spray.
Shoe spray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
like some
It's not
sort
good.
of disinfectant that's been around since like the 40s or something.
Yeah,
Not
it's
doing
not
that.
good. Yeah,
Just bring your own sock.
that's right. All right. Let's see. Final thoughts from me. I don't know. Like I'm enjoying NFL football.
Are you?
Yeah. Good game today. Last week's games were not good at all. Let
No.
me see where we at right now. Oh.
Yeah. So I don't have it in front
The
of me. So
Commanders are up 17-14 on the Detroit Lions. Of course, the Detroit Lions have Barry Sanders on the sidelines today, which is cool to see. Um, huh. That's interesting.
I
I
don't.
expect this to be a crazy high scoring game.
I don't bet Megatron's there. No Calvin Johnson, I would imagine.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, like, has there ever been a team that has their two greatest players in the last 4 decades just up and quit out of nowhere? Like what happened with those guys? They just like, we can't get out of here, so we're just going to retire.
Ooh,
Oh,
look at
there's an
that.
interception.
And keep watching. Yeah,
Oh,
that's going back.
oh, oh.
Pick six.
Pick six. Now it's 23 to 14 Commanders. So sorry if we spoiled this for anyone. So
It won't
yeah,
be because this will be over by the time people hear it.
no, that's true. All right. I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kingsby podcast. Again, uh, if you're so willing, jump on board with our sponsor, Underdog Sports. Use the promo code KingsBeat, all one word, and give them a shot. It's a good time, and it's a lot like a lot of the other online, daily fantasy sport games that you can play. But this one, at least you get some matching money if you jump on board with King's Beat. Cool. So Brennan should be back next show. He was under the weather today. The Kings play tomorrow against the Washington Wizards, and it's going to be a whirlwind leading up to the February 6th NBA trade deadline. So thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast for Fox 40. Sean Cunningham. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you very soon.